Revenge trading is the best way to stay poor. We've all suffered from it. We've all been there at some point in time, no doubt. And actually, in the most recent week, I had a conversation with a trader that's been struggling with this. They've even gone as far as to write down on a sticky note, stuck to their monitor, "Do not revenge trade." They look at it every morning, but yet they still find themselves come the end of the day, or maybe the end of the week, they've broken their rules and they've impulsively got back into the market. Is this something you can relate with? Is this something that you have experienced at some point in time as well? Because if so, you're not alone. One of the biggest issues I find with revenge trading is that people often blame the wrong thing. The issue isn't the impulse to take revenge. In this video, I want to help you to understand exactly what the root problem is, as well as how to actually solve it permanently. Let's get into it. Now, one of the biggest problems when it comes to revenge trading is what most people think are the problem. Whenever I speak to a lot of traders about this, they seem to blame discipline, ego, a lack of self-control, maybe not enough willpower. These for me are all very surface level problems. These are all byproducts of a much deeper problem, which is driving them to want to impulsively get into the market. Now, when you're only dealing with surface level problems, you're never going to have permanent fixes, which is why you're going to go through and experience periods of time where things seem to go well. You might be able to stick to your rules for a day, a week, maybe even a month. But after a certain point in time, something will trigger you and you will spiral back to your default mode of behavior. Now, to be clear, there's actually nothing wrong with the fixes in and of themselves. They're all very logical, they're all very rational, and they should have a significant impact if you're in the right headspace. The problem is, when most people are trying to abide by these rules or promises that they've set themselves, they're not thinking with their logical brain, they're thinking with their emotional one. The thing that most aspiring traders never truly comprehend is the raw purpose of the human mind. This is something I spend a lot of time talking about, and I want to remind you guys that the human mind is not there to help you to perform. It doesn't care about success, it doesn't care about making money. It is rooted in one core thing: survival. It wants to help you to stay alive. And as a byproduct of that being its core nature, it is going to do everything it can to remove discomfort, avoid pain, take away any threat and danger. And this is one of the primary drivers behind why we tend to revenge trade. Taking a loss is inevitable. We're all going to experience it at some point in time, some of us more than others, depending on your strategy. The problem is, when the human mind experiences that loss and you lose money, it sees that as a threat. It sees that as a level of discomfort which needs to be removed, and hence it actively provides you solutions to try and fix that. Now, logically, when you believe that the issue is the fact that you've lost money, the most logical thing that you could do is put yourself in another position where you can make that money back. And this is why revenge trading seems so logical in the moment, but looking back on it in hindsight, usually makes no sense. Now, in many areas of life, when we take action the moment we feel discomfort, it can actually be a good thing. It can lead to a better outcome, it can change scenarios, you can actually make a meaningful impact to change the situation around you to ensure that you're no longer going to experience that discomfort and threat, which is at least how your mind perceives it. But trading works a little bit differently. You have to remember that in trading, there is not a linear relationship between doing the right things and actually getting paid from the market. And this goes against most of our human wiring, which is why most human beings suck at trading. For most of you watching this, I can only presume you've been through a very traditional schooling system. And generally speaking, this teaches your mind to think in one way, which is, if I want to be successful, if I want to be rewarded, then I must be correct. This is enforced through exams where we are given a pass or a failure mark. If we do the right things and we have the right answers for our exam, then we'll pass. And if we don't, we're going to be considered a failure. There is no world in the schooling system where you can lose consecutively. You can get things wrong. You can do everything wrong, but actually still be rewarded. That doesn't exist. But in trading, it does. The biggest issue that most people have is that we come to the markets with a mindset that says being right means we should be successful and being wrong means that we are failing. Now, when you apply that mindset to trading, this starts to explain why we have inconsistent actions, because every time we deem ourselves to lose money and be wrong, we want to fix that. We want to change something. We want to do something about it. Sometimes the skill that you need to adopt is learning to sit with short-term discomfort. The thing that we all have to accept is that when you get an impulse to revenge trade, it's not actually about making back the money. It's about removing short-term discomfort. This is an important distinction to understand because it helps you to rationalize why the mind is telling you to do certain things, which in hindsight don't really make much sense in terms of your trading account. So now that we have a little bit of a deeper understanding as to what is going on beneath the surface and the reason why the mind makes revenge trading seem so logical, what can we actually do to start breaking free from it? The first thing that I would always recommend, and this is step one, is you have to start by creating a mental shift. You have to start by actually reframing the problem in and of itself. You see, what most people tend to do is when they experience any sort of thought or an emotion, it immediately turns into a sign to take action. I want you guys to understand that thoughts and emotions are just thoughts and emotions. They are like clouds in the sky. They will constantly drift across, but it does not mean that something has to happen the moment you experience them. What you are better off doing is learning to acknowledge the thought or emotion in real time. And once you've developed an ability to do that, you have to understand that that thought or emotion is actually pointing you to a sign of communicating that your mind is uncomfortable. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to take action, but you have to understand it's experiencing a state of discomfort. Because inside of this state, it's going to make very illogical things start to seem very rational. This is why revenge trading seems to make sense in the moment. If you're someone that struggles with this level of awareness and catching yourself in that train of thought, the two things that I often recommend: make sure you have a psychology journal that you're filling out throughout your trading day, and make sure you have a good habit of some mindfulness, some meditation, something to train your mind to start staying in the present moment. The more and more you can start to do that, the more you will start to train yourself to become aware of the thoughts in the moment, and then you can start to implement step two, which is our circuit breaker. You see, where most people go wrong when it comes to breaking bad habits of behavior is they try and overwhelm them with motivation. They tell themselves, I'm going to be better, I'm going to do the right things this week, and this week's going to be different from last week. New year, new me, all of that bullshit. The reality is, for most people, motivation is based on a feeling. Discipline is not going to last every single day and for an infinite period of time, and willpower is going to come and go as it pleases. The reality is, the moment all of those things fade away, you are left with your default responsive behavior. And that's going to be based on your belief system. It's going to be based on how well you structured your life and your process. And if you don't have that structure in place, well, you're going to fall victim to exactly what you're thinking and feeling in that moment. So the best thing you could do to implement a circuit breaker is to actually have a plan of what you should do the moment you become aware of these thoughts and emotions. You see, the problem is most people don't have a plan. They just experience the thought and they allow themselves to be consumed by it and never actually question it until after the fact. I would encourage that once you start getting good at recognizing these things in real time, you have to have a plan of action for what you want to do. It might be closing your charts, it might be stepping away from your screens, it might be going out and touching grass for a period of time, it might be engaging in some box breathing. I fully understand and accept that it's going to be difficult to walk away in the moment, but I can promise you the pain that you will experience in the short term will be far lesser of a pain of the one that you might experience in the long run if you stay at your charts and do something silly. The perspective that you need to develop during this time is to understand that the first bit of drawdown that needs to be fixed is not financial, it's mental. The moment you prioritize regaining clarity of mind, it will be so much easier to make back the money later on. And the good thing about the markets are, there are always going to be another opportunity. Even if you have to wait a day, a week, maybe even a month. If you protect your account balance, it will still be there for you to take advantage of those opportunities when you decide to come back. And finally, step number 3, the thing that brings this full circle and allows this to become more automatic behavior in the long run, is you need to start getting really good at pattern recognition. One of the things that most traders get wrong is they think revenge trading starts the moment they decide to actually put on a trade that's outside their plan. I actually think revenge trading begins long before that moment actually occurs. There's usually a trigger. There's a moment, there's a situation where something has happened that has sent your mind on a spiral where it's experiencing some type of threat or danger that it wants to remove. Your job is to figure out exactly what that trigger is. What was the story? What was the emotion that was being experienced? What happened in the markets before the impulse to revenge trade actually appeared? This is where I take you back to the idea of step one, because if you don't know what that pattern looks like, having those emotional journals alongside your trading journals are going to be a really good way to start to connect the dots. The more data you have, the better you can get at recognizing your patterns, the heightened your level of awareness is going to be, and that's what's going to help you to start being proactive with regard to some of these bad habits, and that's how you're going to start breaking these patterns for good in the long run. So look, revenge trading is a difficult one to break, largely because it goes against so much of the human nature of how we have been wired, largely throughout the majority of our lifetime. But if you take these 3 steps on board and you really work to implement them in a systematic and a logical manner, you will get far better at recognizing patterns. You will raise that level of self-awareness, and then the circuit breakers that you are implementing will be so much more effective because they are being implemented before the emotion has taken over and not trying to do it after the fact. We all have a tipping point with how much we can deal with, and if you never learn to implement the circuit breaker at the right time of the pattern, you're always going to be trying to fight fires that you will inevitably lose. If you enjoyed today's video, let me know down in the comments below, what is your specific trigger behind revenge trading? And if you don't already know, what are you going to start doing? What actions are you going to start putting in place to help you to figure out what that trigger process is for you? Now, if you're someone that doesn't understand what these triggers are and how to identify them as part of your bad pattern of behavior, you need to check out my emotional trigger checklist. This is something you will get completely free as you sign up for my newsletter, for which you can find the link in the description box below. It will help on guiding you on some of the most common ways in which most people fall into a spiral of tilt and how you can start getting ahead of them. And by the way, this is on top of a free weekly newsletter that you will get to your inbox each week to help you to reframe your perspective. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. That is a trade you should always be taking. As always, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel to see more content just like this, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.